What's going on, people? My name is Terrell Harris, and this is
Brooke Harris.
And we are from the openbox.com, where our vision is to make wholeness more accessible. So recently we made the announcement that we would be starting a church. And for our Facebook friends and family, you guys know our experience and know what we've gone through. For those who else are online, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, or any other social media platforms, we actually are seminary graduates. We graduated from Wesley Theological Seminary in DC. I met Brooke when she was in her first semester, finishing up your first semester.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
She was finishing up her first semester of seminary. I was, I served at a church doing audio, video. And long story short, what happened is I read like 20 of her books. I kind of was just sucked in, and then I kind of stumbled into seminary like head first, not exactly knowing what I was getting myself. Even though she did warn me, like you may not want to dive in. So I dove in, and originally the Open Box started out as a blog. I was just sharing my notes, and then what happened is I realized that just sharing my notes wasn't working. We talked about some different ways to kind of incorporate my notes. So what I did is started to blog as it relates to current events and try to merge my notes with what was happening currently. And then it dawned on me that if we wanted to make an impact, that we would have to start doing things face to face. So I think originally Brooke had the idea for a church. What happened with that? Did it?
Well, I killed it because I at the time was very frustrated with church in different ways, and I didn't want to do something out of frustration and anger because I couldn't differentiate between like just this sucks and I don't like this with a righteous kind of full steam ahead, let's make this better. Like I couldn't differentiate between that, so I didn't want to move on that, so I killed it.
Yeah. So the vision manual came to her first, and then as I was graduating, I have roughly 14 years or 15 years of experience in IT background doing websites, photography, video, social media. Then it started to dawn on me that I could actually use these skills and these gifts and talents that I had for ministry purposes. And then it came to me the idea to actually start a church. Now I sat on the idea for maybe about a year and a half. I was like, yes, we're going to start a church. And Brooke was like, well, no, God didn't tell me that. So we sat on it. I have like a 15 or 20 page plan. It was backwards and forwards. I had to kind of sell Brooke the idea. So I figured once I could sell it to Brooke, I think everything else would be pretty much easier, right?
And full disclosure, part of the other reason they had to sell me on something that even though I didn't have the idea for how this the Open Box would unfold in the way that it did, I had to be sold on it because really I was operating out of a lot of fear. Fact of the matter, like just to the idea of being a pastor, the idea of starting a church just sounded overwhelmingly scary.
Yeah. To be honest, it still is. I wrestle with the idea almost on an everyday basis, but I'm getting a little bit more comfortable with it. So what's the difference? Everybody, the idea is when people go to seminary that they're going to come out and be pastors. So some people aren't surprised by our ideas. But the thing is, well, first, before I get into the Open Box, everybody that goes to seminary isn't necessarily a pastor. So don't be surprised when people go through seminary and they do different things. But what's different for us, I think we're extremely liberal in comparison to maybe some of the things we were taught or the ways we were taught. So for me, what I saw in seminary in one of our classes, which is world religion, was that our professors had us interact with different faith communities. So we had to interact with Muslims. We had to interact with people who worship under Hindu religion. We also had to interact with Buddhists. Now, wasn't just in a classroom setting. We actually went to a Buddhist temple, Hindu temple, and a Muslim community. So one of the things that came up for me, especially since I used to work in the government, was if I could work with different people of different faiths to build bombs and weapons, not to say that I was doing that, but some government agencies do that. why can't I work with people, of different faiths or who look different than me to actually build communities? Mm-hmm. So my ideas about how we interact as faith communities started changing. And so one of the things the Open Box is going to be specific about doing or having is definitely having interfaith dialogue. So for me, I'm, right now I'm 38 years old. There's nothing you could do or say to change my religious views. You may give me some insight into your beliefs, but I'm pretty stuck in my religious ways right now. Sorry. And I know there's going to be people out there who don't believe like me that's stuck in their ways. So there's no need to argue anymore. Like, why would I argue with you about who Jesus is in my life? And I already know you're not going to agree. So let's just work together and build communities. So outside of the faith aspect, another thing that came to us is that Brooke has a background in mental health, right? Mm-hmm. So we wanted to be sure that mental health was definitely included in what we do with the Open Box. Because I think a lot of times, in some of my background as a young person, we tend to blame a lot of stuff on the devil, but we don't necessarily realize that some people just have mental health issues, and mental health is something the church doesn't necessarily know how to, or some churches don't necessarily know how to handle or deal with.
Right, and there's a lot of stigma around mental illness anyway, and sometimes people think mental illness equals crazy, and that's not the case. I mean, there's a whole range of things that people experience that are important, anything from anxiety and depression to schizophrenia, so it's a whole range, and it's important to address it and to have a place that really has a level of care and concern for it, and coupling that with spirituality. Yeah. And then on top of that, also looking at health.
Yeah, so we actually want, so for me, my idea as I was going through seminary and experience or going through different spiritual practices, what I realized, especially working full time, is that my health was tied directly to my spirituality. So if I was tired, if I wasn't eating right, that affect my prayer life, that affect my connection to God, that also affect my mental health. So for me, it's truly is mind, body, and soul, and that's what the Open Box that's what we want to focus on. We want to focus on the mind, body, and soul all equally. So typically, for me, like I said, when I went to church, it was a heavy emphasis on the spirit. They sprinkle in a little bit of body every now and then, and then not too much on the mental health side. So for me, I think as a whole individual with the Open Box, what we're planning on doing is it's going to be a place where you could have your whole self-service. So your mind, your body, and soul. It'll look different. It may be through workshops. It may be through online classes. It may be through typical worship experiences. And then not only that, so we don't want to be selfish with what we do in the Open Box. So we're not just going to keep it in a building or a facility. That I think that would go against the Open Box. What we want to do is actually be community driven. So for us recently, we decided to skip church on Easter and go and serve homeless. So we went out in DC, we bagged up about 35 lunches, sandwiches, water, and then we actually served the community. So one of our ideas with the Open Box is when we have Sunday services or when we get to that, we don't even want to meet every Sunday. So at least one Sunday out of the month, we want to serve the community, not just throw Jesus at them, but give them, for people in need, give them resources, whether it's food, whether it's access to some sort of mental health, things that they could actually do, whether it's referring them to people. But we want to be community driven and really help those in need. So for me, it's kind of tough because a lot of what I've seen is you get people to the church, but I don't see that in the Gospels. I see Jesus in the church a handful of times, and most times he was at people's houses. He was walking the streets, and so that's where I'm at, with what I want to do. So, mind, body, soul, helping the people in need outside of the actual building or the facility, and open dialogue and open discussion with people of all faiths. Tongue-tied. Yeah. Faith traditions. How about that?
Yeah, being able to really work together for a greater good and still be able to grow spiritually. So not everybody is going to believe the same. And even if you do identify with one sort of faith, Like, you can still not believe the same. And so being able to have a space where that's okay, and you can still be in community with one another, you can still talk to one another and not see it as, oh, I can't mess with them, or, oh, you know how they believe, and doing all that. We don't, we want to grow to a point where that's not really going on. I mean, it's hard to guard against that, but that's not what we want to happen. Like, we want it to be a place where we can really work toward that beloved community.
Exactly. That's it. This is why we are married. That's the exact word I was thinking as you would say it. Beloved community. So this is what we want you to do. If you've been in a position to where you're actually looking for a community where it's a little bit more liberal, or if you are just hadn't been in touch with people that actually think like you, link up with us. You could go to theopenbox.com, subscribe to our newsletter, and we'll reach out to you directly, because I think for me, this is not something I can necessarily turn off. I've tried to turn it off, and I'm 100% certain that there's other people out there like me who are looking for something a little bit different, and they know that God is moving and talking in different ways, but they just can't necessarily put their hands on it. So this is going to be a community where you could link up with like individuals.
Yes. Yeah, we have different energy levels today, which is okay. And see, that's the open box. Yeah. All are welcome. Yeah.
All right. You can follow me on Twitter at Mr. Terrell Harris. And you could actually look at the hashtag the open box. Look for that on Twitter. You can see everything we tweet and stuff like that. You can get a feel for some of the messages we put out. And you can follow my wife, Brooke, at Land of Brooke. And again, visit us, theopenbox.com. Sign up for that newsletter, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Thank you. We hope to hear from you.
Peace and blessings.